Okay. I think we are about to be live here in a second for the first week's live session for Shading and Lighting 2. If anyone has been hanging out waiting, I do apologize. I'm about 5 minutes late on this one. I was just wrapping up a video critique, and time got away from me. But let's get a few things. If anybody is here, oh, can you guys hear me and see my screen? And can you hear my audio? Because I am having some awful network issues right now. Holy smokes. Perfect. Hey, Chad. Does it actually look like you can see my screen? Yeah, I'm looking at my stream health, and oh my lord, it looks terrible. I'm hoping it's better for you guys. I have a little like a video up on my other secondary monitor where it kind of shows me what's going on, and it's showing me the absolute worst looking network connection. It's like popping in and out. It's showing dark red, like I might as well be on a dial-up connection at this point. Oh my goodness. All right, let me try something real quick. I'm just gonna stop the stream and just restart it. I just want to see if that fixes anything. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, we're back. Oh, it's green. It's acting like it's better. I know I'm gonna give it about 5 seconds here, and it'll probably crap out on me again. Amazing. And just like that, fellas, we just conquered technology. We did the old classic method, which is when it doesn't work, you just simply hit restart. You turn the power off and turn it back on. It works every time. Oh my goodness. I know, seriously. That's exactly what's going on. I love how troubleshooting always goes back to the roots. You don't need to look anything up on Google. You just turn the power off and turn it back on, and things magically work. Incredible. So how's everybody doing? You guys excited for getting overloaded with turkey? I'm actually doing something kind of different this year. I am not spending Thanksgiving with my family. I'm actually going to be out of the country for a little bit on a cruise ship going to Mexico. So, should be fun. Yeah, I love seeing my family and all that. I'll probably see them around Christmas, I think, this time. But I'm also kind of excited to not argue about politics. So there's definitely some benefits to also not seeing your family on every Thanksgiving. Oh, you're getting snow. Yeah, that's I miss the snow. Where are you at, Chad, again? I know you told me before. Actually, where does everybody live? Because I know they've been kind of working with you guys a bit. Where is everybody located? You all scattered across the country. I'm sure you know like all your instructors are based in Florida. A little weird. It's the Los Angeles Film School with like a subsect in Florida. All right, David, you don't have to brag. We all know you're in Seattle. Cool. Oh wow, we really are literally across the entire country. A lot of California, LA, Pennsylvania. Cool. Well, good to have you guys back. I'm originally from Maine, so this whole Florida thing, starting to like it. I think my whole family's been hit with a couple snowstorms recently. All right, so let's. What happened at the school? Oh, do you mean like the emails about the lockdown? Yeah, they had sent. Um, yeah, I don't know for sure because it's the campus, the one over in LA. So we don't really get a whole lot of information about it. But it sounds like there might have been um, gunfire like the next block over from the campus. I don't know what was happening. Uh, it's not the first time that's happened. Oh, of course. Yep. Yep. That does sound about right. All right. Wow. Apparently I didn't get any of that. I need to get out of my work bubble here and leave the office, or just load up the news. That would be helpful. Man. Well, we don't have anything like that in Florida. We just have hot weather at the moment. I think it's about 80 degrees today. So let's do this stuff. Now that we've talked about death and Thanksgiving plans, let's get into some 3D things here. Um, so a couple things. I'm sure you guys have noticed this because I sent everybody a message about it. It was also in like the welcome video activity, but I just want to make sure you guys are all aware. Here's like the full group. Um, so I'm not listed as the primary instructor at the moment. Luis Suarez is actually listed as your primary instructor, and it's mainly because I'm going to be out for a week, and my shading and lighting one group is massive. They actually moved the shading and lighting class up. They flipped it with digital painting. So because they moved it up, I actually have a double month. I think there's like 44 students in that class. So Lewis is being a champion and jumping in here, and he's going to be helping out this month. So you'll probably interact with him a little bit. He'll be jumping in and out of the activities, giving you guys critiques. You can see him on Discord. Super cool dude. So definitely talk to him. But let's do some stuff this week. I'm not really going to spend a whole lot of time, I think, with the very first one. It's really not very fun for me to do this activity. It's mainly because it's easy. The first one, if you guys haven't finished it, I know a couple of you are still in the process of doing it. I've already gone through and graded a couple activities like right before I started my live session, but it's basically just introducing you guys to simple RenderBand material presets. You know, where RenderBand's preset browser is located. You guys have actually used this before because you had to grab some stuff from the preset browser in the previous class. I think you were getting one of the Pixar Dome lights from there. But all we're doing is assigning presets. You're rendering it, just verifying that yes, this looks like it's the right material on the right object. And the kind of the I guess the fun challenge for you guys is when you go through this and you start verifying that the materials look right. There are a couple in the middle columns of each row that you're going to have to find the attribute referencing, like diffuse color, diffuse gain. There's a couple like roughness settings. It's just a little scavenger hunt. Find the attribute, look at the reference, and then once you know what the attribute is, you're simply just adjusting it, whether it's like a slider up and down, a color slider, a color attribute. You're just going to be adjusting that until you get a close match. So some of it's color correction. A couple of these might be like specular roughness settings. For the metal, it's using that. These are like diffuse gain, edge color, which is kind of like diffuse gain in this case, where it's just darkening the metal. And then the last one here for the whole bottom row is going to be glass roughness, which is you're going to basically turn these into like a frosted glass. But pretty easy stuff. There's a lot of really cool varieties in here. And if you go on RenderBand's site, they do actually have a bunch of other presets they've made recently. Actually, I don't know how recent it was, and you might be able to tell me that, David, but they have a bunch of other presets that you guys can download. They talk about where to install it, so it shows up inside of RenderBand. So if you guys are all about those presets, and who honestly doesn't love presets, you could install way more of them, and so you have more ammunition, more fun things to play around with inside of RenderBand. But at the end of the day, you're just producing a nice little pretty render. I bring it into Nuke, I compare it. Actually, I wonder if I still have it open. Oh, I don't. I had a couple open earlier. I was just kind of flipping back and forth, comparing it to the reference. And then I let you know how you did. Usually people do pretty good on this one. Yeah, texturing is going to be really cool. And even though this is not this week, like I tell this to basically anybody who will listen, I am super excited for you guys to get to 4.2 because this one, I think I've been talking to you guys about this before. This is where you finally get Substance Painter. Oh, glorious Painter. The best, one of the best softwares ever. Now owned by Adobe, and fingers crossed it stays pretty awesome. But you're going to download Painter, create an account. This is if you guys are into texturing and you like presets. I mean, this thing is just the bee's knees. They have so many fun materials in here. There's a whole community of people that share materials for free. There's also a part of the community that will not share their materials for free, and they will make you pay for it because business. But they're really cool. And the cool thing about Painter 2 is when you get through week 2 and 3 and you sort of understand how we would texture with Photoshop, which 2D texturing and how to view that inside of Maya. When you kind of get through that process, I think you're going to have a greater appreciation for Painter because you'll really understand oh, this is the way we used to texture in the olden days. Wow, Painter really does make it that much easier. So we are doing you the favor of showing you the classic old way of doing it. Some studios still use Photoshop for texturing, but we're having you do the old dirty way to do it first, and then we're going to blow your minds with Painter so you see how to do it with 3D later. A lot of cool stuff. All right, so what I'm going to do with you guys today is we're going to hop all the way to 1.3. I like working on this one. This is always a pretty fun one. We are going to be, drum roll, making these. We are making a car. Not modeling it, but we're going to give you guys the same car, and we're going to go through all sorts of different materials. We're going to do car paint, rubber, metals. We're going to assign it to different things. Basically, you're just building off what you're doing for the first part, which is just simple material assignment and just understanding how to put them on the objects. And we're taking it to the next stage and having you guys adjust settings on something that actually looks like a final shot. Now you are going to have some freedom here. I have a bunch of images I'm giving you as examples that kind of look like this. Don't think that these are what you have to match. These are just different versions I've made just so you kind of have ideas of what you could do. If you guys want to find some other reference of like a different type of car paint you like, you're more than welcome to do that. The only thing I would ask is if you guys decide that you're doing something a bit more out of the ordinary, like chameleon paint jobs or pearlescent, or just a crazy pink paint job that you've seen somewhere, just include reference. So, because generally, I'm kind of, assuming this is a very standard car paint color, and that, or at least a material that behaves like car paint. And if we do have you kind of go a little off into left field with it, I just want to see visually what you're trying to pull that from. Because we've had some pretty crazy car paint submissions. We had one person that went full metal, and I was like, all right, I mean, you can do metal, but can you show me the metal paint job you're finding it from? And sure enough, he showed me a completely metallic car. It looked very expensive. Okay, so let me just move this all out of the way. And what I'm going to do is go into here. We're going to go into 1.3. Bada bing. Here's all the different renders I did for the examples. Ooh, Mazda Soul Red. I'm going to have to look into that. Actually, let me pull that up right now on my other monitor real quick. Mazda Soul Red. Oh, that is nice. Yeah, you're not kidding, David. All right, just so you can see it here. This is a nice one. I do like that. That's a pretty red color. Cool. That could be a nice one. So I have a couple here. I have like different matte paint jobs, different rims where I'm doing certain like accent colors, like anodized metals on the lip of the rim, different plastic trims. So just ideas for you guys to play around with. That's not a car. That's something else. But okay, let's just take the folder. I'm going to put it on my desktop so I don't butcher the project I already did. And let's jump into Maya. We're going to do our same routine where we open Maya, set the project, do all the fun, pretty stuff. So what we want to do is Control O for open, set project, go to the desktop, select the root folder, set all the open folders default in the right project folder. Amazing. Scenes, double click vehicle practice, and just like that, we're done. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you guys first jump into 1.3. We've got a camera set up, and I really hope I locked it because I've had a terrible habit of not locking cameras recently. I did not lock it. Okay, I'm glad I noticed this. So I've made another activity where I totally forgot to lock the camera. What you may want to do at some point is when you eventually do get in here, I don't mind if you want to move the camera as long as it's not too crazy, but it might be a good idea to also just use that little padlock button at the top just to lock the translate rotate XYZ. That way you don't accidentally move it into a weird position. All right, so we're good there. I'll do the split view. You guys know I love that split view. That's going to be the one thing everybody remembers from Shading and Lighting 1 and 2. We learned stuff, but what I do remember is the instructors seem to be overly obsessed with the split perspective view. And you're right, I am. All right, so I've got the split up. Oh yeah, the scale on the camera. Does this actually matter though for the final render? I know if it's non-uniform, it would stretch the image, but does this actually affect the rendered image? Oh, well then, I have a lot of videos to fix. All right, well, you heard it here. Let's put that back to 1, but let's just get this thing set up here and try to make some pretty images. So what we're going to do first is maybe run through some of the very simple ones, like just assigning like metal presets to certain pieces. And I kind of feel like we can maybe build off this actually. It's interesting. This one's going to be kind of tricky because this particular paint job, the color really darkens a lot based on glancing angle. So there's a couple of things that are going to be a little more advanced than we're going to be able to do at the moment. But let's start off with some of the metals. We'll do the easy stuff first. So what I'm going to do is go to the preset browser. And actually, what I'm going to do is just undo the padlock. I'm going to move this to the same part as the attribute editor and just scale this in. This thing has it's probably my 4K display, but this preset browser has just a terrible time adjusting. There we go. We could also tear it off if we want, but so we could have like a floating window for the preset browser. That's also totally fine. I actually might do that. We're going to get crazy here. I'm going to put that lock down. I'm actually tearing the preset browser off. We're going to keep this dude hanging out over here for a little bit. And yeah, we'll do it this way. So we'll move this here for a second. I have a little floating window for the preset browser. And we're going to find out what colors we want to do. So if I go to metal, we have a lot of different metal presets here. Some of these I would definitely not recommend using because a couple of them have like various patterns and textures connected into them. I believe a lot of these go into the opacity, so they're sort of acting almost like a cutout, like a cookie cutter, where it's just cutting out chunks. We're not going to want to use those for really anything, but let's see. If we click on something, I tried to keep this relatively easy. I've actually combined a bunch of stuff together. This is not really how you're supposed to model something. These would all be separate pieces. But since, again, you guys are still so new to selecting and assigning materials, I didn't want you guys worrying about diving around here trying to click on every single bolt across the entire surface. So these are all combined. Now, if we're going to go with this, I'm kind of digging the look of the chrome and like doing chrome, black, and red. I think that might be kind of a good look. So what we're going to do here is do some nice chrome bolts. So if I have all these selected, we're going to come down here. I have chrome. You can tell a lot of these do look really similar. When you begin to like analyze how metals work, what sort of frequency of light waves they reflect back. you will start to notice there are very, very subtle differences. Like metals just aren't silver and gray. There's these little shifts of like this is a little cooler, there's a little bit more of like a green or a yellow. You'll start kind of seeing that. But we're going to have that selected. I'm going to right click on Chrome. And when we bring something into Maya, we have a couple options here. So we have import and assign to selected, which is probably what most of you are going to do. And then we have just straight up import. Now I'm going to do import and assign to selected. And I really want you to understand the difference between these and how to sort of manage and keep track of your materials. So if I have this selected and I pick the top one, I just imported this into the scene. So the first thing you want to know and just remember is that all of these materials and the presets, they are not in your Maya file. This is still in RenderMan's library installed on your computer, but it's not really in your scene. But you have the option to bring them in your scene as soon as you start picking import. So when you do import and assign to selected, what that does is it brings it in the scene, and of course it assigns it to whatever I have selected. So in this case, it's on there. So if I just render it, we'll click over here. You can see we're getting something. It's all white right now because I don't even have a RenderMan material on here. It's currently using just one of the old crappy Maya ones, just a Lambert. But you can kind of see up close, there does appear to be something different right there. So what I could do is I could just zoom in with this camera, if you're kind of curious, and render this. Now, you can tell once you zoom in, even with the perspective, like the chrome's on there. It's definitely working. So let's turn that off, okay? Now, what if I wanted to, let's do like a plastic. All right, let me go back to the preset browser. So I'm going to do a search this time. So if I go, like, let's say we're in one of these little sections right here. If you do a search at the top, what it's going to do is try to filter things out based on your selected group. So you want to be kind of careful about this, but if you go to materials, and if I type in something just like rubber, you can see a bunch of different rubber presets pop up. But if you happen to be in a sort of a subcategory and you type in the same thing, it won't show it. So it's only going to filter based off what your selected group is. So if all the materials are selected at the root, it's probably a better way to do a search. Just kind of be careful because there's been plenty of times where when I first started getting used to RenderMan, I wasn't realizing that it was filtering based on my selected group. It's not looking literally through everything. So it's very dependent on what you're clicking on. But you just do a search with this selected, you'll probably find what you need. So let's do that again. We'll do rubber. And these are terrible for tire rubber. We're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to maybe click on this. We'll do the back. We can't actually see this tire in the render anyway, but we're going to do it. Yeah, so when you say search all, do you mean just like to have it search through all the materials? I just want to make sure I understand that properly. Just going to wait for that to catch up. But basically, yeah. So right, that's what is going to happen if you're on the root. So when you have materials selected, you are actually searching through all the categories because if you can see all these categories are within the materials. So yes, as long as you have that selected right there, it'll totally work. Yep. So, and actually, when you click on materials, this literally is everything. So these will just sort of hide, what's not part of acrylic. So I usually have it on that guy right there anytime I do a all right. Oh, by the way, let me know if my audio cuts out. I've had some pretty bad issues with that recently. Now what I'm going to do is just click on a couple tires, and we're going to go to the back. Boom. Oh boy, there we go. And the laptop fan's kicked on. There we go. I don't know if you guys can hear that. So we have all those selected, and this time what I'm going to do is go in here, and we're not going to do import and assign to selected because we are rebellious and we like change. So if I just do import, we'll do this blue one. So I have this blue rubber material. We'll pick this one. Now, what's going to happen here is when you do it that way, and if you try to render it, just watch what happens. So I'm going to do the render. You're like, what the heck? Well, that's not good. You're like, darn you, RenderMan. You're not working. Well, we'll do violet rubber, import. And then we render it again. We did, and it's like, still nothing's there. So what's really happening? So what's going on is you actually are bringing in the material, but because you're not doing import and assign to selected, you're bringing it in the scene, but it doesn't know that it's supposed to be assigned to anything. Yeah, exactly. You're totally right, Chad. So we want to make sure it still goes on the object. Now you have a couple options at this point. You could, realizing that, go back in here and do it again. You could be like, all right, well, let's try this one more time. We're evolving. We're figuring this out. We're going to do the one over here, and this time we'll do import and assign to selected. Now, if I do that, yeah, basically, yeah, it's floating around. You can find it in the outliner, but it's just generally in your scene, and I'll show you how to find all these things. Now, when I do import and assign to selected, you can see once again, like the Chrome, it's in here, and you immediately get that visual feedback that it worked. Now, the reason why you want to be careful about this, and this is like, because I used to teach at a different school in a class, much happened with a lot of my students, is they would start to lose track over, oh, my stream may have just popped there. Oh, just 1 second here. There we go. So one of the single most sort of frustrating things with a lot of my students at the other school was by the time they got to the end, they were very comfortable with creating materials and importing them, but they would very quickly just have this huge Maya file that would have hundreds of materials they're not using. There's duplicates, they're not named, they're not assigned properly, they're just existing in this file, and it's a giant mess when they try to find the right material. So I want you guys to kind of see how we organize this stuff properly. So if you go into the outliner, yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. It's still here. You're not seeing it in the render, but when you import it, it's here. And you guys remember back in the first class, like way early on, we kind of talked about this DAG objects only thing. And a lot of you were actually turning it off on your own because you saw it in the video. And what this does is it allows you to see all these other nodes on the back end. Now, some of these you don't want to delete or you can't delete, but like all these little RenderMan presets and global settings. But what I want you to notice is you'll see these little icons right here that look very similar to this thing at the top, which is a RenderMan thing, right? This is the little Pixar ball. Those are the materials we brought in. Now, one of them, the window material, was actually already assigned to the windows. You guys don't have to worry about that. But there's violet, pure, chrome, blue. They're all there. Yeah, it's probably, yeah. The resolution might be a little rough. I'm looking at my stream again, and it looks like the health of that just went to absolute crap. If you want, you could try just refreshing the YouTube page you're on and just see if that kind of kicks in again. I mean, I'm still working in the office, and for some reason, late at night, I swear there's just like squirrels outside that are just chewing on the cables. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I do that all the time. Yeah, I just have to go in there, and it's like YouTube doesn't understand to refresh the resolution when it kind of goes down the hill or downhill there, and you have to sort of manually force it back to like a 720p or 1080. Yep. So they're here. Now you can totally do it through the outliner. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way, but I also want you to see this in the Hypershade. So Hypershade is at the top. Okay. Now before I open this, let's just open it. Do you guys remember the issue that happened with the Hypershade back in the first class? Maybe not the Hypershade, but the attribute editor. When some of you guys were going to that Pixar Dome light, and like it just started crashing. Like you'd like go there, you'd load in an HDR image, and before you could even do anything in the Pixar Dome light, it immediately just like Maya's like fatal error. It shut down on you. It tried to save the Maya file. Not everybody ran into it, but a lot of people over here were immediately getting crashing issues over here. Yeah, the icons were freaking out. Yep. Okay, so we've arrived at that great point again where that problem is going to pop up. Now, thankfully, because you guys were pretty proactive and you all remember this, Hey, Felicia. Because you all remember this from the first shitting and lighting class, you probably aren't going to run into this again. So just to make sure that this is not going to be an issue, if you open the Hypershade, nothing should crash when you have a render made material in here. If you notice going into the Hypershade causes Maya to do a fatal error, make sure, well, first off, you'll have to get out of Maya again altogether. Just go into an empty scene. You want to turn this button off. That's going to prevent the icons from updating, and you're going to put the the icon view as list instead of icon to visually hide them here as well. Yeah, so that actually would be really helpful. So David, he works over there with RenderMan, and they would probably love to know what the bug is. And we have not been able to replicate it. Like all the instructors can't produce this error, even though it seems like over half the students have it, which is very weird because we all have the same laptop. So if anybody is feeling adventurous and you wouldn't mind just doing a one-on-one with David, just to let him like remote into your laptop, he might have somebody else do it from his team. But that might help us troubleshoot what actually is going on, because I would genuinely love to know why it's crashing for so many people, because we can't recreate it. So if you're interested in that, just hit up David on Discord. That would be incredible. If I could give you bonus points, I would. You can't actually do that at the school, but you can pretend like I'm raining bonus points all over your grades. Yeah, but if you guys already have this set up in list format, you're going to be good. But make sure you don't enable these. Don't double click on the icon up here to force it to update. Don't do any of that. That's bad news bears for you guys. Now back to the whole thing with the material is when we brought him in here, we have all these extras, right? So how do we know what is assigned to what? So here's how you do this. We have all these materials assigned at the top, or well, they're not assigned, but they're in here. What you want to do is if you hold your right mouse button down, because it's going to bring up all these options, holding it down over the material, we want to go to the right and do select objects with material. So select all the objects that are currently using Chrome. Now when I do that, watch what happens in the viewport. Right? If I go to wireframe, oh no, not smooth, jeez, not 3. It shows me that we have now selected the bolts, right? If I do window, right click, select the windows. There's blue rubber. Nothing came up, so this is one that was not assigned. That's interesting. Okay, we can skip the Lambert and particle cloud. Those just come with Maya. Pure rubber, boom. Violet rubber is nothing, right? Because that was never assigned properly. So it's kind of a cool way just for you to see what is currently assigned to something. Now, eventually, when you go through this whole thing, you're going to probably want to delete all the nodes you're not using. Most likely. There are some cases where you may not want to do this because there could be a material you made that you're not currently using, but you may eventually. But if you're pretty confident you don't need any of this other stuff, here's how you can clean this up. At the top of the Hypershade, you're going to go to Edit, and you're going to come down to Delete Unused Nodes. Now, what this is going to do is not lights, but basically anything that's material network related, if it's not assigned to anything, if it's just in here hanging out, it thinks you're not using it, it'll delete it. So if I do it right now, you'll notice a couple of these guys disappear. And they're gone. I think we lost the blue and the violet, which is perfect because we weren't really using those anyway. Now, what if I want to get Chrome on a couple other pieces? So here's another thing to kind of think about. If I go back into the preset browser, let's say you're like, okay, I'm really digging the Chrome and the bolts, but man, I should have put them on the mirrors and I wanted them on maybe this. Okay, maybe that needed to be Chrome. And we'll do the door, the lock, this little thing, which I think is the gas cap. That, maybe we'll say this, and we'll come to the front. That's Chrome. So I'm finding all these other pieces which I think should have been using Chrome. Hey, more people are showing up. Welcome to the party. So I have all these things selected. Now, could you guys think of the problem if I brought in Chrome again and did import and assign to selected? And let's say you did this per object. Like you said, I want to do the side mirrors, import and assign to selected. You click on this and then you do import and assign to selected. What do you think is sort of the issue that is going to eventually happen if you keep doing that? Because visually it might look correct in the render. Like you are importing Chrome on each piece, but what is different about doing it one by one like that? Cue the Jeopardy music. So the problem is if you keep doing that, even though you think you're using the same material, you are actually importing it over and over and over. Yet it won't really break anything, but you're basically bringing it in the same material multiple times, and you're going to have like 8 chromes in here because you keep doing it individually. And so it's not necessarily wrong, but the problem would be if you ever had an art director say, you know what, I like all the chrome, but I wanted all the chrome to be a brushed chrome where it's a lot rougher. And so and he tells you, can you go into the chrome material and I want you to change the roughness to make it look really worn down. Maybe they're doing some Mad Max thing with the metal. I don't know. Uh, but because you now have 8 or 9 chromes, because you keep bringing it in over and over again, and it's on each piece separately, you're now going to that many different materials to change the same setting over and over and over, just so all the chrome behaves the right way. So if you kind of think of when you're building a project, you want to start thinking about, are there pieces that should be sharing the actual same material? Like if you change a setting on the material, do you want it to update across multiple pieces at once? Now, so right. So if you did need to change one item, then you're totally correct. You would go. That would be something you would do. You would have it imported again, do it on that one piece, and it'd be totally fine. But there's a lot of cases where you do want the same material to drive multiple pieces, and in that case, like let's say I didn't want to import this again. I want to use the same Chrome I have. Here's how we do that. So back in the Hypershade, remember earlier I was showing you guys this whole right click with select objects? If you just look at the other things shown up here, look at the one above it, assign material to selection. This, because I selected my other pieces and this already exists, if I do assign material to selection, it's sort of like the import and assign to selected, but it's doing it with a material that's already in the scene. If I do that, it's on there. And so now look what happens. We're now going to get Chrome on everything. It's a little hard to see because of the resolution, but it's on all those pieces now. They all have Chrome. And is a really cool trick you can do, by the way. I'll bring in copper real quick. I want to show you how to swap up materials real fast. This is pretty slick. So if you are in here, I'm not going to do an assign thing. I'm just going to bring in a copper material. I'll just do import. Okay, so I have copper in the scene. Whoops, not that. It's in the Hypershade, so there's copper, right? It's here. There's also a way to do a material swap very quickly by getting used to that whole right-click thing over the icon. I was talking to one of my coworkers about this before that didn't realize that this was a thing. So if we bring this in, I'm going to render it so you can see it. Actually, let's do this over here so you can actually see this a little bit easier. There we go. We'll do that. Okay. Okay, so we all clearly see it's Chrome. So check this out. Remember how I was doing that select objects with material? If you want to put everything that had Chrome, you want to swap it out for copper, right click over Chrome, select objects. It selected everything, right click over copper, assign to selection. And let me deselect it so you can see it, it's copper. I'll do it again backwards. So now we have copper, I want to go back to Chrome, right click, select, right click, assign. And it's back to Chrome. So you're going to get faster at that, but that's basically doing a material swap with just holding your right mouse button over those and using one of these two things right there. Really cool way to swap stuff out pretty quick. All right, excuse me. Let's go back here. So I'm kind of digging the metal. Let's do, I'm going to go here to the rubber and fix this real quick. So we've got pure rubber as a starting point, which is totally fine. What I'm going to do is change a couple settings to get this a little better. And I'm actually going to unlock the camera. And actually, I may have to use perspective for this. Let me lock that again. We're going to get right here, turn that on. We're going to use a crop so I can reduce the render workload. There we go. Oh, that's great. We're going to have crop over the other window too. Okay, there we go. So it's rendering this little section with the crop button. I think you guys have been pretty good about using that before, but it's right there just in case you haven't been checking it out. Let's also do selection highlighting off just for a second. And under rubber, we'll turn it to a tire. Right now, it does not look like a tire. So we're going to drop this down really low, probably like a very, very dark gray, almost completely black. And you can see that we're getting that diffuse color, but what makes up rubber? So rubber is the diffuse reflection, and when you get through the 1.2 activity, all what I'm talking about right here is going to make a lot more sense because you're going to learn about the physics of what diffuse reflections are, what specular reflections are. But currently we're just getting color and a little bit of a highlight. So specular reflections are where you get the sort of shininess on the surface on top of the color. So this is what is absorbing the light, and what the color you're getting back, like right here. Like if I had a, let's do like a kind of a greenish color, like a seafoam. This is the color that you're getting reflected back to your eye. The other opposite colors around it are what are being absorbed and removed. So we're going to keep this pretty low, and I want to add a little bit of a highlight here. So we have face color and edge color. I do want you to see the difference here. And so to show you this, I'm going to change these to really weird bright colors. So we're going to make the face color red. I'll make it darker so it doesn't completely wash things out. And I'm going to make the edge color like a bluish color. Let's do something like this. You can kind of see it on the edge right there. If I play with this, it should show up a little bit. Oh, sorry, not roughness, exponent. There we go. It's kind of a cool looking effect. What you guys are kind of seeing though is that when you have a highlight on something, we're giving it a color right now, which is kind of making it look metallic, which you definitely would not want to do for rubber. But I want you to notice that with face and edge color, see how it looks like you get a different color based on the angle of the surface. And if I move the camera, it will actually change. See how it's like, you guys have probably seen this effect before, almost like you kind of get with oil and water. It's called iridescence. There's a couple other versions of it, like Pearl paint jobs have it. Chameleon paint jobs do the same thing. But it's changing the way the light reflects, like the different light waves and colors vary based on the angle of incidence and how we're looking at the surface. But it's very important to kind of sort of understand this because what we're doing is an effect that is in the real world. It's something called a Fresnel reflection. And Fresnel is actually spelled Fresnel. You can call it Fresnel if you want. But that is sort of controlling how it changes between these two colors. Now, normally with most surfaces that aren't metallic, like dielectric surfaces, they're really just going to be some type of black and white color. So if you keep it with something like this, where it's really dark face color, because watch how easy it is for this to wash out the rubber. Like you barely boost up face color, and this thing doesn't even look remotely close to like a rubber. It's like turning to almost like a weird metallic or like a chrome mirror effect. So we definitely want to keep that really low. But what I want to have happen is the edge color needs to be significantly brighter because I want the reflection to become more intense as the angle changes around the surface. You'll probably see this a lot with car photography. Actually, it might show up here a little bit. If you kind of look, like, see how the pieces of the paint job that are facing directly towards the camera actually don't look that reflective. Like you get a lot of that red diffuse color, but look what happens as you start to wrap around here. See how like that almost gets to the point where it looks like it's pretty close to being like a mirror. It is way shinier. that is the same thing we're talking about. That's a Fresnel reflection. You actually can see it increasing its reflectivity as the angle begins to become more perpendicular to us. Hooray, physics, fun stuff. Now I'm going to give this a pretty dry look for the rubber. So we're going to take the roughness and maybe go up to like 0.7, 0.75, 0.8, be pretty high up there. And we're going to add a little bit of a shine on top of it. On the video, I go into iridescence to do this. So we're going to come down here. I'm going to do the same thing. Iridescence is kind of interesting because this will give you kind of that same effect I did earlier where it kind of adds like color variation. And the reason I'm doing this is because when you have someone that will put like a tire cleaner on the tire cleaner has like a lot of different chemicals in it, like oils and um, other things that are used to kind of give it like a nice protective coat. And there is a little bit of that color variation that happens. So we're just going to kind of trick this into looking like it has a polish on it by boosting this up. You can tell it's really touchy. Like we are already way too high. I'm going to have to type in some numbers to fade that back a lot. And I'm going to bring up the roughness a little bit. Actually, I might even pull down the saturation in this case if it's a little too vibrant, and we can just ease that back just a little more. It looks a little bit better from a distance. The problem too with this tire is it's very basic, and so I don't have any, there's no tread pattern, there's no detail in like the wall of the tire, but from a distance you actually do get that subtle hint that it kind of has that polished tire cleaner look. This is sort of optional. If you guys aren't digging it, you can totally skip iridescence and just try to get this to look okay with just primary spec. But if you wanted to do more of a wet look, we would just basically keep the roughness lower to get a tighter highlight. Okay, let's do some plastics real quick. We're going to zip through this a little bit faster. So we're going to click show selection highlighting back on. We're going to do that. This dude, what am I missing here? This. I think the window trim, the wipers. Okay, that should be good. Sure, we'll do the light. All right, so let's go back in the preset browser. Keep clicking on the wrong one. And we're gonna come down to rubber again. We'll do green latex. Why not? Let's do violet rubber. Import. Oh, should have done import and assign to selected. That was my bad. So we're gonna go in here and fix that real quick. Keep clicking on the wrong window. So I have violet. I'm going to do right click over that and assign material to selection. And there we go. That's something. We're making good decisions here. This is beautiful. And we're going to make this black. So we're going to kind of stick with that darker theme here. So we're just going to take this, drop it down pretty low. There we go. Yeah, I like that. Nice. Okay, so let's come in here and we'll just do something kind of simple like a chrome on this. I think I'll keep it easy and we're just going to kind of zip through this part and say we have chrome on all of this. That's technically not supposed to be chrome, most likely, but we'll do it. Even the clip, yeah, all this stuff is going to be chrome. All right. And once again, I've done the wrong window, I think. Actually, yeah, we'll pull a new one, actually. Let's just do that. We did chrome. I feel like it's not going to be very pretty looking if I do a different type of metal, but I'm feeling risky here. We're going to go with gold rims because we are apparently making the most expensive vehicle we've ever seen in our life. These rims would be stolen immediately. So I have my lovely gold preset rims with chrome bolts, black, white. It's actually not as terrible as I was thinking. Yes, this is all going according to plan. Let's do the paint job. So this is really the kind of the last thing I wanted to cover with you guys is the car paint. I'll show you a couple ways to do this. So what I'm going to do is build this one from scratch. And this is going to be the first material you're going to make without relying on the preset browser. As we hear a gasp from the audience. Believe it or not, you don't have to start with the preset. Once you get really good with RenderBand and understanding how materials work, how the Pixar surface material works, you will be able to probably create a lot of these materials from scratch quicker than it would be to go through the preset browser and tweak it until it looks right. So what we're going to do is grab a couple pieces here. We'll probably do the back. And I guess this, oh wait, that might already have something on it. Those, yeah, this is all going to be paint, I guess. Oh, and that. Okay, now to do this from scratch, in the render band shelf, you're going to see there's a little button right here that looked very similar to what we saw there. So this is where you make render band materials. Now you'll notice this has a little arrow in the corner. So remember, all the icons with arrows mean you can right click on it. And I can do Pixar surface. So if I have them selected, I click on this. It just assigned that material to the objects. Now it's kind of like the preset browser where if you just simply click on this and nothing is selected, you are still making Pixar surface materials. They're just not assigning to anything. So they're just hanging out in the Hypershade and building up. Oh, by the way, one thing with the Hypershade is you'll notice as I keep making things that like this whole area down here is just like building up with all these material networks. This is what the material looks like when you see it as a node. And by node, I mean kind of like Nuke. If you guys understood Nuke, you will sort of understand what the Hypershade is doing. The Hypershade is trying to be like Nuke, but doing a terrible job at it. It's a little clunky, but everything inside of Maya are actually nodes. You don't really see that on the front end because it's all kind of pretty with menus and sliders and colors, but really in the back end, things are connected together very, very similar to Nuke. You just don't usually see that stuff. But if you want to clear this thing out, right above the graph, you can hit this little twinkly star looking thing, clear graph. It's not deleting anything, it's just removing it from your workspace down here so you don't see all these materials building up. Now I want to graph the material we're doing here so you can see it. So if we look in the Hypershade, we have Pixar Surface 4. That's what we just made earlier. And I'm going to right click and do Graph Network. This will put this material in the node graph. So now I have like a clean one that shows this. We have the material, and this little blue guy right here is called the shading group. The shading group is what's connecting the material to the object. So actually, I bet if I go into the node editor, I totally thought we would see this in here actually. Oh, I haven't assigned it to anything yet. That's why. No, I did assign it actually. You actually can sometimes see this shading group connected to the object. So you'd actually would see like the geometry connected in here. I'm kind of surprised it didn't do that. But this is sort of the middleman between shader and object. So we're going to click on this, and I'm going to rename it. You can kind of come up here and just type it in. We'll do car paint material. Boom. There we go. All right, it's already rendering, and so we're going to try to get this. The darker color might be a little tricky here because there's a couple things I'd want to do with facing ratios on diffuse color to get this to work, but we'll see what we can do. So I'm going to go in here and let me pop this in because I really want to put this next to it. Oh, that's okay. That's about as good as we're going to get apparently. All right, so let's go here, and I'm going to try color picking, and let's see if it works today. If you want to color pick, if you click and hit that little eyedropper, oh, actually, that kind of worked. It's not really the right color, but it's close enough. Wow, yeah, that's very saturated. It's pretty good. I think the color to me is just a little off. It's a little too, it needs like almost like a bluish tint to it. So I'm going to go in here and just shift the hue a little towards blue, barely, more of like a berry. And then I'm probably going to darken this down just a bit. And the reason I'm darkening this down is because all these different lobes or the different parts of the material add together. So I know as soon as I add a reflection, it's only going to get brighter. So I'm trying to kind of make sure this isn't too intense before we start adding those highlights on there. And I also do want to bring down the saturation maybe a teeny bit. It probably is that rich, but I'm just looking at the RGB values here, and we have no green, so there's a little bit of a risk of the color breaking down. We'll just see what happens. Screw it. All right, let's give the paint a nice little reflection. So I'm going to go into primary spec, and I'm going to build this basically how the paint's really constructed. We have the paint itself that has one type of reflection, but what's on top of the paint? There's a clear coat. So the clear coat and the polish, that's really where we're getting the reflection. The paint below it has a different type of reflection. And so when you start looking at these different reference images for cars, you'll kind of notice that there looks like there are two different highlights that are stacking on each other. You can kind of see it here a little bit. You know, some of these are actually CG renders, which are not helping, but there's layered specularity. And so we're going to go in here and just boost this up a little bit. You can see we're already getting something there. This will highlight. I'm going to have my edge color cranked up. Look at the silhouette. Beautiful Fresnel reflection. And I want this highlight to be a bit drier than the clear coat. So we're going to just maybe push this to like a 0.35, 0.3. So this kind of feels almost like just your standard paint reflectivity, almost like a semi-gloss. Now above that, we're going to add the shiny stuff. Now, if you look at the material and kind of come down a little bit, you're going to see there are other sections that look very, very similar to primary spec. We have this, here's rough spec. They look identical because they really can do the same thing. It's just another area to do more specularity. I'm going to go down to clear coat. And actually, David, I meant to ask you this before, but didn't you guys have a thickness at one point in clear coat? Did that like just disappear? I could have swore that was there. And I don't know when it disappeared, but I feel like I'm losing my mind. But we're basically doing the same thing under clear coat, where we're going to do the same thing, but for this roughness, we're going to have like 0.1. Oh, is it physical? Is that why I didn't see it? There it is. Yep. So we have like a layer thickness. This is a way to control the thickness of the clear coat and how it absorbs the light. This actually might be kind of cool. I want to see if we boost this up, if it does. Oh, it totally works. Yep, this is actually what I was hoping was going to happen. It's basically what this does, if you set it to physical, is it absorbs some of the light passing through, and see how it's actually darkening the stuff behind it? It's kind of what's going on right here. It might be better for you guys actually to stick with physical. Just use the edge color as a way to control the intensity of the highlight. This is your way to control how thick the clear coat is. You don't want to go too much or you lose a lot of your color. And then roughness is going to be how much you diffuse the reflection right there. And if you go really high, you're essentially doing a matte paint job. But somewhere right around here is going to look pretty good. Let's just open that up a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to come back up here. Actually, that is probably not too bad. We're getting there. It's probably going to be a couple things. Like it's a little different because I have like sky in here, and that's picking up a lot of blue reflection from the skylight. But we're kind of bouncing around the right idea, right answer for that. But we basically have a layered specular reflection, and we have something kind of cool looking already. So we've done a paint job, and it's really easy to change this too. You can just go in here, and if you're not happy with it, once you get this basically set up, similar to how I do in the video, you could go back to your color and very easily change it to whatever you want. So you can play around some other colors if you're not quite sure if they look good. Like the gold, I do think the blue and gold are always a classic combo, so that might work better in this case. But anyway, that is basically the car. There are a few other things that you could do, like getting into UV mapping and putting like decals on the door and the hood. Didn't really have time to get into that today because we went pretty deep here with like the hypershade and how to assign materials. But if anyone does have questions about UV mapping and texturing, like putting stuff on, like a sticker or an image on part of the car, definitely let me know. We're going to be doing that anyway in week 2 and 3. So you may find like after you get through the second and third week, you want to go back here and actually try applying images to the car anyway. So that will come later. But basically, you just produce your final render. Once you're happy with it, hit the big R. Make sure in here you guys are bumped up your settings, 256. I'll probably do 444, and then produce your render, save it out, and you're done. And that's 1.3. Whew, we did it. We actually went over a little bit, but we also started kind of late. So how do you guys feel about that? It's not too bad. I think it's just kind of fun that you guys are finally going to be able to see some material properties this week. And the 1.2 discussion, that's probably going to really clarify a lot of how these things work, because you're going to understand the physics of what reflections are. Later, we'll talk about transmissions and emissions in week 3. But once you understand how this works in the real world, it actually gets pretty simple to relate this back to the Pixar surface and render made materials. It's really fun stuff, though. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Made a pretty good turnout this week. Hope everybody enjoys their holiday break. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Eat lots of turkey, then regret eating lots of turkey. It's the American way. And I'll be out of town, but I'll try to catch up with you all Monday or Tuesday once I'm back. Cool. I will talk to all you guys later.